Hello and welcome back to the Online Educa Berlin 2010 podcast series. Today I'm joined by Josh Bersin from Bersin Associates. Today the firm provides learning and HR decision makers with product and market data, insight on trends and expert advice on enterprise learning and talent management. In 2010, Josh was named by HR Examiner magazine among the top 100 influencers in HR. So, Josh, tell us about the session that you'll be involved with at Online Educa Berlin 2010 and this subject of learning culture.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to be talking about one of the findings that we've come up with over the last year, which is that over the last 3 or 4 years that companies have been adopting e-learning and a whole variety of communication tools inside of their organizations, knowledge management tools, social networking tools, instant messaging, that one of the biggest drivers of impact is no longer the availability of learning or the availability of learning content, because there's really almost too much content in most companies, but actually the way in which managers and executives and learning and development facilitate and support continuous learning inside the company. And what we found in our research was that if you look at many of the management practices that are outside of learning and development and group them into a category which you might call cultural things, some of them have huge impact on the type of learning and the pace of learning and the depth of learning that takes place in the company.
So is this what you mean when you talk about learning culture? What are the kind of characteristics that you might, the ways in which you might recognize learning culture within an organization?
I'll give you one simple example. Does an organization learn from its mistakes? So when something doesn't go well, when a project fails or a program isn't successful, or a product isn't selling, or a competitor is winning, or maybe a particular big customer is unhappy, does the organization have a culture of talking about what's not working, fixing the problems, and then improving people's individual skills so that those things will get better? Some companies, in fact, this is one of the findings of this research, that requires a sober discussion of reality that some companies are good at and some companies aren't good at, and that filters it all its way down into the individual engineer, manager, salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
And if that person isn't given the freedom to say, what you guys told me to do isn't working, it's failing for some reason, so I need to do it differently, then learning won't take place. And there's actually 40 practices like that we identified that you're going to recognize when I talk about them. I won't give away the whole speech.
Mm-hmm.
Are things that are actually extremely powerful, and they're things that you'll say, oh yeah, that is a good point. That is something I'd like to talk with our leaders about, that in fact facilitate learning.
So it's important for trainers and the people organizing the training to empower the people learning to be able to kind of pull content as they require it, rather than this kind of more traditional, setting out curricula and for them to work through it, do you think?
Yes. In fact, there's really two, things that drive success in an organization related to learning. One is the deep skills and specialization of each individual employee. So does the employee, in whatever role they're in, whether they're in a leadership role or a functional or a specialist role, do they have enough knowledge of what to do and how to do it and the internal processes that they can do it very, very well and can make it better and better and better over time? Mm-hmm. The second thing that drives organizational success is really what we would call learning agility of the organization, not of the individuals. You can have a whole bunch of people that are really good at their jobs, but if they're doing the wrong things, it doesn't matter that they're good at them. So that's the ability for the organization as a whole to change and adapt to the things that go on around it. And the thing that we found about culture is that it doesn't have to be this amorphous, fuzzy thing that nobody really knows what it is. We found some very specific things you can do that will, in fact, change your culture or at least improve it, that are actually very practical.
So there are ways of measuring and identifying what needs to change.
Yes, in fact, and just one point on that. You can actually measure your culture. one of the things I'm going to show people when I'm there is that we have an assessment you can take, and there's a lot of other cultural assessments available, and you can measure it. You can take it yourself, and you can have your managers and your employees take it, and you'll see where you score in different areas, and that's a change tool just in itself.
So I think in a recent piece of research that you did, you found that 50 to 60% of the companies that were surveyed were not happy with their kind of internal e-learning programs. I guess this is quite surprising. So is this about what they're measuring or about how they're conducting their e-learning programs? You know, tell us what you feel about that.
The reason that a lot of companies are unhappy with their e-learning strategies is one of two things. Either they haven't adopted e-learning enough and they haven't gone down the learning curve and they feel frustrated that they don't have enough content online. And actually there still are a lot of companies like that haven't published enough content. Or they've developed or purchased off the shelf a lot of e-learning that's not being used. And the reason it's not being used is that the paradigm that a lot of content was developed was the page-turning, instructor-led training in a web browser paradigm, where you would click from page to page, and maybe there was some audio, a little bit of video. And frankly, people don't want to do that anymore. We've all lost patience with that. It's not as exciting as it used to be, given all the distractions that we have in our lives and at work. So there's a lot of companies that have, large libraries of content. They're frustrated that people aren't using it. And what we've trying to do in our research in the last 3 or 4 years is show them the ways to make this all very engaging, because it can be very engaging, but it has to be blended with some real-world, human interaction, some simulations, and some other activities. Video, for example, is very big right now. Video, you can put video online at a very, very low cost. You couldn't do that 4 or 5 years ago, so there isn't enough video in a lot of e-learning yet.
Well, we'll be exploring that further at the conference in December. You'll be there for the whole 3 days. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about some of the sessions you'll be looking forward to catching or being involved with. I'm particularly interested in talking to companies and people about things they're doing in simulations, which is an enormously fast-growing part of online training right now. The simulation world was too expensive for most companies until the last few years. Ways that companies are engaging their physical instructors in virtual learning. What I've seen in our research is you can do virtual instructor-led training and get higher engagement and higher learning levels than you can in the classroom now, but you have to know how to do it. So I'm going to try to find as many sessions as I can on that. I'm also particularly interested in a little bit of the public policy issues around reskilling of the workforce. I think we're in a global economy that, all the data I have seen, and certainly in the United States, is that we basically have a skills gap in most countries in technical skills, and in some countries in managerial skills, and organizations and businesses, aren't really scaled up to fill that gap. So those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to learning about. Well, I'm sure we'll hear more from you when we're there. It's been great to speak to you, Josh. Thank you very much for giving us your time today. And take care, and we'll see you at the conference.
My pleasure, Don. I look forward to meeting you there and everybody else.
Thank you. If you would like to catch up on the latest news and podcasts or register for the conference, please go to www.online-educa.com. Thanks, and we hope to see you again really soon.